When you think of modern day guitar heroes, John Mayer is right up there at the top of that list. Someone whose tone is so desired and so sought after, you're bound to have a few misconceptions with his gear and his tone, especially with someone like John, who's very secretive and doesn't really like to come out here and just be like, hey, here's what I'm using and here's how I do it. So today's episode is going to be going over the top 5 biggest misconceptions with John Mayer's tone and gear. Let's get right into it. Number 1 being that John uses Big Dipper pickups in the Black One. Now, this is simply not the case. Even the thought that John uses Big Dipper pickups quite frequently is totally wrong. He's maybe used them a handful of times right when the John Mayer Strat was first released, when he was using some production models and pre-production models of that guitar with some Big Dipper pickups in it. Back then, maybe 2005, that's really the only time frame that he was using the Big Dipper pickups. In the Black One, they are custom hand-wound pickups that were designed specifically for that guitar. John wanted a black Stevie Ray Vaughan #1 guitar. John Cruz couldn't really do that due to legal reasons, but he made something that was a bit of its own thing, as well as a very heavy tribute to SRV's #1 guitar. If you don't believe me, let's hear from John Cruz himself on this matter.
It's a great guitar, one of the best sounding Strats I think I've ever heard. The pickups were pretty much, people say, are those the Big Dipper pickups in this? No, not on this run. On his guitars, I think they do on the line, or like the Big Dipper style pickups, which were cool pickups, sound good. But this is one that they were modeled, chosen to be kind of close to Stevie Ray Vaughan's tone. So that's, they're custom hand-wound pickups that we used in that were chosen for John's guitar. And that's what I think a lot of the magic came into that.
As you heard from John Cruz there himself, they are not Big Dipper pickups in the Black One. Now, Big Dipper pickups do have their place in John's tone. They are more along the lines of the Underwound Texas Special pickups that were in his old Stevie Ray Vaughan Strat, like the one I have behind me, but they're not really his main stage pickup sound. So if you see a pair on Reverb asking a lot of money and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I gotta get these because they're gonna be the secret of John's tone, unfortunately, they are not. They only really have value when they come in a John Mayer signature Strat. All right, number 2 on our list is that there was a Klon during Where the Light Is. John did not in fact use the Klon until around 2008-2009 during the Battle Studies era. During Where the Light Is, it was mainly a Mark I blues breaker and a TS-10 for the gain sounds. Now, a lot of people like to think that the Klon, being so mythical and now being so important to John's tone in terms of pedals, it must have been on Where the Light Is. Well, we have rack pictures from right around the time of Where the Light Is, and during the Continuum tour, no Klon was ever present, so safe to say no Klon was ever actually used. Now, you can get close to the Where the Light Is tone using a Klon into the TS-10, but if you want the purest form and as close as possible in terms of pedals, you really want something like a Snouse Black Box or an original Mark I blues breaker. Don't get the Mark II, it's terrible and it's not going to get you close at all. Now, the third thing on my list that people commonly don't understand and get wrong actually involves this pedal right here, the Aqua. Now, the Aqua can be traced as far back as 2004-2005 with the John Mayer Trail on his board. Now, what a lot of people think is that you can just grab an Aqua Mark III or a Mark II like I have here from the store, look at John's settings and copy it exactly to get his tone. Now, in a perfect world, that would be the case, but we know that John, for the most part, I say for the most part because he has used Mark II and Mark III very rarely on his board, he uses an original Mark I hand-built by George Trips in the 90s. Now, the reason why a lot of people get their Aqua settings wrong is because they don't understand that there are multiple versions of the original Mark I Aqua. This mainly has to do with the AP1. The AP1, which is the original version of the Aqua, has different knob placement than the Mark II and the Mark III, and even the later revision, the AP1 of the Mark I. Now, on the AP1, you actually have where it'll go blend, feedback, and then delay, going from facing you left to right. And now the pot for the blend is actually reversed, so that you have your lowest setting on the inside and your high setting on the outside, which is actually different compared to the AP2 Mark I, as well as your Mark II and III Aqua. So you have to keep in mind that when you're looking at pictures of John's rig, what Aqua is he using? Now, John predominantly used the AP2 back in the Continuum and Trio days, and now he uses an AP1 with, you know, his main touring rig now for 2019 and everything like that. So you have to keep in mind when you're looking at pictures of the Aqua Puss, what version are you looking at? Now keep in mind as well, on the inside, these pedals are fundamentally different. So you have to use your ear in order to tweak your Mark II or your Mark III settings to get that exact thickness to your tone with the slapback. Now keep in mind, the original Aqua Pusses are a bit darker and they do kind of affect your tone a little bit differently than the Mark II and the Mark III, but these are still really great options to use in order to getting that similar slapback thickness for your tone. Now number 4 on my list actually still involves the Aqua Puss, but this time we're also going to be talking about the Keeley Katana, the original that John uses. A big misconception is that John runs both of these pedals, or either one of them, on all the time. Now again, this is simply not the case. The Aqua Puss, for example, even though it's used to thicken your tone, still has quite an audible slapback delay to it. Now you can hear in John's playing when it's on and when it's off, and even seeing pictures of his board live, you can tell the LED is not on. It's not on all the time. Now it's kind of a similar story with the Keeley Katana. Now, I think when John came out and said that he uses it on his lower output guitars to help boost and level the signal out, that people thought, oh, he uses it all the time because John uses low output pickups and lower output guitars. That's not the case. With the black one, John for sure might use the Keeley Katana on all the time to help level it out. But if he runs his 64 Strat or maybe his Silver Sky, he doesn't need it because they are hotter guitars and they're hitting the signal chain a lot harder than the black one is. So the Katana kind of has some different purposes. It can be used as a leveler, like I mentioned, and it also can be used just as it's intended to, as a clean boost for when John needs just more of his clean sound. Now the 5th and final thing that people quite frequently get wrong is that John uses a black Ceriatone Centura as his new Klon. Now back in 2019 during the North American leg of the tour, John came out with a black looking Klon on his pedal board, and a lot of people jumped to the conclusion that this is a Ceriatone Centura. You know, they make a Klon clone in the exact same enclosure in black like John's. That must be it. Now, when you think about John, the amount of money he has in his gear and how particular he is with his tone, he can afford as many clones as he wants. He said himself that they are stupidly expensive, but it's fundamental to his tone. If he needs another Klon, if his breaks, he's going to buy one. He's not going to care if it costs him 4, 5, 6, 7 grand for one. He's going to buy one. But the black Klon, now we know it's still a Klon. Is it modded? That's the question. It might be modded, but the base foundation of that pedal is still an original Klon. I'm going to hand it over to Josh Scott, who's going to also confirm that it's not, in fact, a Ceriatone Centura.
John Mayer's black Klon. Josh Scott.
I will respect his privacy. I get asked this all the time. It is not this. It's not a Centura, like the replica company. This is a replica that doesn't try to... This is a clone.
Very clearly
this is not a counter, like it says, you know, Ceriatone amps. It's not this. That's all I'll say.
Good enough.
And just remember, he's John Mayer. He can have the real thing.
Thanks, Josh, for that. So, like Josh said, John can have the real thing. Now, Josh, I'm willing to bet, has done maybe some modding of pedals for John, because why would he block out the Klon when it's been a staple on his break for years? If he wanted to hide what he was using, he would focus on something else other than what people have known for years that he uses, like the Klon. So there you guys have it, my top 5 biggest misconceptions when it comes to John Mayer's gear and tone. I hope you learned something. Please give this video a thumbs up and please hit that subscribe button. I know a lot of you have been asking for demos of my 2019 Mayer pedalboard replica. And as I've said, once I get my 2-rock in and proper audio equipment to record tones, I'm going to be doing a whole series going over songs and demos of that pedal board. But for right now, these are just some fun filler videos to get out and give you guys some content. So please hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit that bell button, do all the standard YouTube stuff, and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks so much for watching, guys.